I don't remember that, and I don't remember ever dating any girl without the permission of her mother.
Okay, not remembering and not doing it are two different things. At least that's what someone would argue. Let's welcome in our panel to discuss this today. Joining us now is Erich Reimer. He's a conservative commentator and columnist at townhall.com. We're also pleased to have with us Robin Byro. He's a Democratic strategist, and he was a former Obama regional campaign field director. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us here today. Obviously, this story is generating a lot of attention, and reasonably so. Sean Hannity has received some backlash from some of his sponsors over this, even though, you know, gosh, it's not Sean's fault for having this guy on to answer some of these accusations. But one of the things that has happened is Keurig, the coffee maker, and Realtor.com and 23andMe, as well as a few other advertisers, have all pulled their ads from Sean Hannity's TV show because of this interview with Roy Moore. Let me start with you, Robin. Is this premature on the sponsor's part to do this?
I actually tend to think that it may. This is the United States of America. We still believe in innocent until proven guilty. And all Sean Hannity actually did say was that don't rush to judgment and let this play out. I tend to believe that with the females, and Gloria Allred, famous women rights attorney, is going to be having a press conference at 2:30 with, where I'm told, maybe even more victims. So I think there's something to this. But as far as the sponsors pulling out, I mean, it's hard to say. It's certainly their right to do so. Maybe they might feel that this protects their brand, and I can't argue with that point, John.
And what about you, Erich? What do you think?
I think good on Sean for fighting back. I think conservative media right now has been under attack for a very long time by some of those who want to engage in a campaign of intimidation, such as by specifically by threatening advertisers and sponsors. And I think Sean is certainly going back hard against this. And I think, you know, we, as was mentioned, we live in America. Not only do we have the constitutional guarantees for free speech, but also we should embrace a culture of free speech as well. And I think the best way to go about things like this is to give conservative liberal ideas a platform and to let the public decide upon them rather than trying to silence people who've been in the business as long as Sean Hannity has.
Well, this is 2017, so there's no time for any kind of thoughtful deliberation on anything, guys, right? And Sean's fans did not waste any time with their response to what Keurig decided to do, pulling their ads. Let's take a look at some of that video. There's a wide range of things that people are now doing to, let's just say, dispatch of their Keurig machines. Can we play some of that?
Well, let's get to smashing, folks.
Look what I found.
Now, look, no matter how you feel about this issue, I think this takes it way too far. I think we can all agree there. Why do people destroy their personal possessions? I mean, again, this goes back to the fact that we have no idea what actually took place. We have the accusations of the woman. They've been reported by the Washington Post. We have Roy Moore denying those accusations, claiming that he's going to sue the Washington Post for reporting those allegations. Meanwhile, we have this whole other environment that takes place on social media where people now just think it's their duty to post these videos. I mean, Erich, when you see this stuff take place, does it give you much hope for a thoughtful electorate out there willing to make sound, rational decisions based on facts?
Yeah, I think it's no surprise. I mean, certainly I think our discourse has fallen into kind of a little bit more spin and the more kind of social media-based trends and hashtags and all that lately. I do think a lot of conservative voters across the country are expressing their long-felt anger over how the media has been treating them for a very long time, and especially how now conservative media personalities are facing so many difficulties with these kind of backlashes and intimidation campaigns. I think certainly this is not the, kind of the idealized Jeffersonian, citizenry in action, but I think it's also not too surprising. I mean, our discourse has been at this level for quite some time, and it'll take a while before it climbs back up again, I think.
Robin, can you ever think of a situation, a scenario when you would destroy a piece of a household appliance over something that the manufacturer did? Even if it was a working product, you need that for your coffee every morning. Are you actually going to destroy the coffee machine because they take a political stance or a stance based on business that you don't like?
I'm trying to think if one cannot come to mind right now, but I want to say that this basically is no surprise. I agree with the other panelists. Donald Trump labels anything that he does not like as fake news. Judge Moore has labeled this as fake news. These people bought this lock, stock, and wholesale, this notion that anything that they don't like is basically fake news. So they're automatically dismissing the victim's claims and are lashing out at Keurig. And I kind of want to say that this might be some victim blaming here, to be honest.
I don't know if it's victim blaming per se, but, you know, I do think this shows a dangerous trend, and Eric hit on it, that our electorate, you know, they grow more and more frustrated no matter who is elected. We elected Donald Trump. He made big promises to build the wall, to lower taxes, to repeal Obamacare. None of that has happened. Now you see these ancillary arguments take place, whether or not Keurig is wrong or right. We're talking about it here on this show. People think enough about it to post a whole bunch of videos destroying these coffee machines. But nobody's really talking much about the actual facts of this story, and I think that spells trouble, and it tells us why we're not getting anything done when it comes to these real important issues like tax reform and health care in this country. Eric?
I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. I think given the kind of the gridlock that's been the norm in D.C. for not just the past year or so since Trump was elected, but rather the past few years. I mean, forget that since 2010 or so, since Republicans retook Congress in that Tea Party wave, there hasn't been really much big legislation at all. And I think when there's not big policy debates that are taking place, when there's only obstructionism and fighting back and forth, I think the only things to talk about end up being these kind of like proxy wars over machines and or coffee machines in the NFL. And I think definitely is disappointing because we have so many important things right now in our country, such as tax reform, Obamacare reform, et cetera, that need to get done. And instead, we sadly are boycotting, you know, Sean Hannity and going about this destroying coffee machines. And so I think it is disappointing in many ways. Right.
We've all been conditioned to need this kind of instant response. Either we agree with these folks and we want to feel better about that, or we disagree with them and we want the folks on our side to make us feel better about that. Again, either side not really debating what's at stake here. This Senate race, what could happen if Moore stays in the race versus getting out, and you know what the Democrats are planning here, because they certainly have to be sitting back, really enjoying all this. And the timing, of course, is very suspicious. Why this would come out now, why it wouldn't come out previously, and other Roy Moore things seems to be helping them out a little bit. What do they have to do in 2018? We'll talk about that and much more right after this.
And now a message from the Democratic National Committee.
This Tuesday, Americans went to the polls.
And they told President Trump, "We don't like what you're doing at all, sir."
And now one thing is clear. We're back, baby.
The Dems are back.
Estamos de vuelta.
And we welcome you back to American Talks Live. Finally, you probably haven't been watching much Saturday Night Live. The audience at home doesn't seem to appreciate their one-sided humor. But finally, this last weekend, Democrats had their chance, getting made fun of a little bit after they won several state and local elections. You think they would have just swept the White House and both houses of Congress. Anyway, SNL mocked members of the Democratic Party for being out of touch with everyday Americans, and that's where we want to welcome in our political panel, someplace where Hollywood actors and New York actors are out of touch with everyday Americans, and so are members of the Democratic Party, and maybe even some Republicans, too. I want to welcome in Robin Biro, also with us. We also have Eric sticking around with us. And Eric, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing your last name up here. I just blanked on it, but we apologize about that. We'll call you Eric for now, so I can get that and remember it.
Erich Reimer.
Eric Reimer. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure I had it pronounced correctly. Erich Reimer with us. He's a columnist and also a Republican commentator. Eric, thanks so much for being with us, and thanks for the reminder on the last name. It's good to have you with us. So, you know, obviously this was some low-hanging fruit for Saturday Night Live, and I think they felt obligated to make fun of some Democrats. And Robin, since you come down on that side of the fence, I'll talk to you about the Democrats here a little bit in this situation. They were pretty confident after those elections, those special elections, or not special elections, but those off-year elections in New Jersey and Virginia. Are they too confident?
I think that is very much the case, I believe. Now, we had some surprise wins. I'll tell you, I'm hailing to you from Atlanta, Georgia, and the biggest surprise that we had were a couple surprise wins in Athens, Georgia, that we were completely not expecting. So, there's some things like that. There's some other races. I wasn't as concerned about the governorship races. It wasn't, to me, a big surprise that a Democrat replaced Chris Christie, who was the least popular governor in all of America. But, I do think that we got a little overeager, and we've got a long way ahead of us for the midterms, and we cannot afford to get complacent now. That did not serve us well in 2016, John.
All right, I'm a little curious because I went to the University of Georgia, and for the folks that don't know at home, Athens is a more liberal bastion in a very conservative part of the state of Georgia. So what are you telling me here, Robin, that some Democrats picked up some seats where they weren't expecting to?
Yeah, John, that's exactly what I'm telling you, John.
We heard about that in some other places in Virginia, too. But I think it's maybe a little anecdotal at this point to factor that into what it means for 2018. But, Eric, over to you, because there's one specific thing that they made fun of on Saturday Night Live, and that is this flirtation with Joe Biden, that he's still a potential runner. Here's what they had to say about Joe Biden.
And also, that's right,
it's Biden time.
And Biden's making the rounds. He's got a new book out. Of course, he's got to promote the book. But he seems to court these questions about whether he would run in 2020. Eric, do you relish the opportunity to see? We got 10 seconds here. Do you think Biden's even viable in 2020?
I mean, I think he definitely poses a tough challenge. He certainly has the kind of charisma and energy to appeal to.
I hate to cut you off. We got to leave it there. We got a hard break. We're coming back. More America Talks Live with our panel right after this.
For only $99. To learn how it works and to order, visit cardiamobile.com. Also available at Amazon.
And we welcome you back to America Talks Live. We've been talking about a lot about the Roy Moore case. Also, another senator in a little bit of trouble, New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez. I'm hearing now that the jury deciding his fate right now is deadlocked. The judges told him to get back to work, so we're still waiting some news on that. Also, that news conference scheduled with Gloria Allred and another accuser supposed to come forward against Roy Moore. We're still waiting for more information on that. We'll bring it to you as soon as we have it. But now we want to move on, and we want to talk about NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. He continues to be under fire for not doing a necessarily great job when it comes to handling the situation with the players who are kneeling during the national anthem. Well, we're also finding out that he's under a contract negotiation right now with the NFL, and he's reportedly asking for a lot. One team owner is not happy about it. That is the Dallas Cowboys' Jerry Jones. Now, here's what Commissioner Goodell is asking for today. According to ESPN, he's asking for a $50 million salary. He also wants health insurance and a private plane for life. Both of those two things he wants to have for the rest of his life. I don't blame him, but that is a little bit ridiculous. The NFL's Compensation Committee is going to discuss this, his whole entire package. But as we mentioned, Jerry Jones, not happy about it. He's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, right now, Goodell makes about $30 million a year for running the NFL, and that's where we want to bring back in our political panel. We have Erich Reimer along here with us, also Democratic strategist Robin Byro. Gentlemen, thanks for being around. You know, we were talking earlier in the show about Democrats and Republicans, some of whom might be a little bit out of touch with the everyday American. But what about Roger Goodell here, asking for a $20 million pay increase, asking for health insurance for life, and asking for private plane use for the rest of his life? Eric, under any circumstance, can you see the NFL fans? These are the people who are so fed up with these protests. They're fed up with these players acting like spoiled, rotten brats. Do you think under any case that Goodell is going to get away with this type of contract from the NFL?
I mean, I think it's just absurd that Goodell's asking for this much of a raise, not only after the recent controversy over players disrespecting our flag and the whole Colin Kaepernick scenario from last year fester and go and spread around. And now we're seeing the stuff come home for that. And the NFL's ratings are down. There's been boycotts and protests. Just the whole CTE scandal, the whole the controversy still over Deflategate from any of the suspensions for that. So I think, his tenure's been marked not just recently, but also over the past year or two by so much controversy that I think NFL fans are pretty annoyed. And for him to now not just want to keep his job, but also to ask for such a humongous raise and lavish lifestyle, I think is just pretty absurd.
It's clear that this is the only thing that Roger Goodell seems to care about, Robin. It's about the bottom line, how much money he can make and what the NFL can do for him, because he sure didn't care about these protests when they first started. He didn't really seem to do much about them until there were significant reports about fan attendance being down, about viewership being down, about discussions, not this season, but more about next season, of some of these advertisers considering taking their money elsewhere and leaving the league. So it doesn't appear that Roger Goodell really cares about what's doing right. He cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's the bottom line.
And that reminds me of our president, frankly.
Okay, all right. You gotta bring. He does seem to care. He doesn't benefit financially if he gets these NFL players to stand up. The president doesn't benefit financially from that.
No, you can't blame a guy for trying. I don't blame him for asking. I agree with Eric that I think this is absurd. I think it's very inappropriate for him to be asking more than the league's highest paid player. I think that's just ridiculous. And a private plane for life, that's ludicrous. And I do think that he could have done so much more to have been proactive about handling the kneeling and the protests. I am a combat veteran U.S. Army Ranger. I myself see this as an expression of one's First Amendment rights, so I have a different take on it. But he could have said something like that early on, and it would not have taken these routes that it has, where it seems to be like un-American. And that it's gotten twisted to where now people conflate and think that they're protesting the actual anthem. They're protesting Donald Trump. That never was the case. They were protesting racial injustice in America. That got lost in the weeds, and it's frustrating.
Well, I wish we had more time because we can't really get into it with you, and I, of course, appreciate and respect you for your service, but we do have a strong disagreement on time. It's up to the NFL owners to really hold these guys accountable for their actions. And if this happened any other place of business, if I kneeled down at work, I would be fired. Same thing for a lot of other folks. So I don't think this is a First Amendment issue for the NFL players, Robin. I think I got to draw the line there, but unfortunately, I'm not going to give you much of a chance to respond, but we know we'll have you back because we do enjoy having you both here as well. Erich Reimer and Robin Byro, thanks so much, gentlemen, for your comments, and thanks for being with us here on America Talks Live.
Thanks so much.
All right, still more to come here. We're going to keep taking a look at these